Okay, here's part B. In part B, they're asking for an equation of a line tangent to the graph at x equals 3. So we've written lots of tangent line equations. I'm going to go ahead and write down point slope form to remind myself of everything I'm going to need. I already have x1. I'm going to have to plug that back in here to figure out what, we're going to have to plug that back in here to figure out what y1 is equal to. Okay, and then we also need the slope. So for slope, I know I'm going to need f prime of x. Since f prime of x is in two pieces, I need to figure out, well, what am I taking the derivative of? At x equals 3, that's in this lower interval here from 0 to 4. So we need to take the derivative of this function. So I'm going to write down the piece that we're thinking about. So when I take the derivative of that function, the derivative of negative x is just a negative 1. First, we have the constant multiple rule out in front, so that's 3. The derivative of the outside function, the derivative of cosine is a negative sign, so I'm going to make this a negative value, negative sign, with respect to the inside, times the derivative of what's inside. Pi over 2x is just a linear function, so pi over 2x, the derivative is pi over 2. That's just another constant. So I'm going to make this 3 pi over 2 sine of pi over 2x. Something like this. And now I need to think about, well, what is the x value that I'm plugging in here? So again, x is at 3. So when I plug in x, which is 3 times pi over 2, we get here that, again, using the unit circle, what is the sign of 3 pi over 2? So pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2 is down here. I'm thinking about the y values. So sine is negative 1. So as I multiply that negative 1 times the negative 3 pi over 2 I already have, here is my slope. It's kind of ugly. Some of you took this non-calculator problem and went ahead and put your answer in decimal form, which is totally fine because you will have a calculator in front of you when you take your test on Tuesday. But you can totally leave your answer just like this, which is what I'm going to do. The last thing I need to figure out, well, what is the y1 value? So what is just the value of f of 3? So again, going back up here and using this second piece, I'm going to plug into that function, plus 3 times the cosine of 3 pi over 2. When I plug in a 3 there. So I already have, for this cosine of 3 pi over 2, my little unit circle sketch that I'm going to use. Cosine's the x value here. So I'm going to replace cosine 3 pi over 2 with just the 0. And I'm going to get a negative 3. So now I'm ready to substitute everything into my linear equation. Y minus a negative 3, so we could call it plus 3 if we want, equals. Here is my slope, m, from my derivative value. x1 is 3. This works. If you check out the scoring guide that I'm sharing with you, it's a little bit different form, but they take all correct forms of linear equations. I would assume on this year's test they will also take a decimal form of this. I did check for each of you which one was the correct decimal. Some of you got incorrect decimals because you started making calculation errors here, or some of you forgot chain rule for the derivative here. So check this out and make your corrections.